Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Gospel of Cleasy. This is your boy D Freezy, aka Cleasy for Sheezy. All right, how's everybody doing tonight? I hope you are doing better than uh, my beloved U- University of North Carolina Tar Heels, who came up very short last night against the Duke Blue Devils. I live in Durham, North Carolina, as I've stated before. So, as you might be aware of, I know a lot of Duke fans, um, and they are riding high today because they took my poor Tar Heels to the woodshed. Um, so it's not looking good this year for us. When I say us, I mean Tar Heels. I'm a Tar Heel through and through. Born about 30 minutes, well, raised about 30 minutes from Wilmington, North Carolina. So that's the home of Michael Jordan. So I was a UNC fan and a basketball fan because of, and tried to be a player also because of his raw airness. I think he's the GOAT. Um, but they needed the GOAT yesterday in Cameron Indoor Stadium because it was ugly. And that being said, on the home front here in Durham, we were supposed to have a Black History Parade yesterday along Fayetteville Street. It, for some reason, was canceled. The reason we were given was that it was canceled due to weather. Um, It was very nice yesterday. It was probably 65, almost 70 degrees. We've had a warm snap, so don't really understand what the weather had to do with canceling the Black History Month parade, which started yesterday. February is Black History Month. Happy Black History Month to everybody out there. Black history is world history. It's not only in February, but because it is omitted and retold in not so accurate ways, we celebrate Black History Month in February. I believe it was started as Black History Week by the Right and Honorable Carter G. Woodson, who wrote a book called The Miseducation of the Negro. Uh, he was responsible for starting Black History Week, which went on to become Black History Month. So shout out to the ancestor Carter G. Woodson. If you have not read um, The Miseducation of the Negro, it might clear some things up for you. I recommend it. It's definitely on the reading list. If you ever need a reading list, hit me. I can suggest some things for you to help you, you know, fight against a lot of the misinformation we hear out there. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. Misedu, if I can spell. Yeah, so shout out to Carter G. Woodson. Um, Yeah, so we a group of us here in Durham. We call ourselves the Black Hoodie Brigade. It's led up by Minister Paul Scott. If you don't know who he is, you have been nowhere near the movement in the last 30 years. He's been on this show. Shout out to Brother Paul, Minister Paul Scott. He is a icon in the Durham conscious community. He's a stalwart. He's always doing the work. Um, you may see him on TV. You may see him on CNN. So he called for us to organize today down at the Black Wall Street Marker, which is right on Mangum Street. I believe it's Mangum. Anyway, right across from City Hall. So we gathered there, a group of us, and we waved the red, black, and green, represented the Black Hoodie Brigade and Black History Month, and let everybody know that nobody can cancel. I know there's been some chatter out of the goofy place about canceling a lot of things. But one of them was canceling Black History Month or um, overlooking or omitting or removing Black history facts from curriculum in several different areas of the government. So nobody can cancel Black History Month. Black History Month is going to go on, whether it's quote unquote officially sanctioned or not. We're still going to celebrate Black History Month. So whoever is trying to cancel it, good luck, because we're gonna hit you. We're gonna hit you every day until the last day of this month. I don't remember if it's 20. I think it's 28 days this year. It's not leap year. But we're gonna celebrate Black History all month and all year. And that's part of the purpose of this show. So we met downtown. It was a good time. We let everybody know that Black History Month is still on. Still gonna happen. That was good. Hope to build on that and get more unity, because there's some things that the Black community in Durham needs, and there's some things that we are going to press our elected officials on, so that we can see that our interests are met. And this is just a symbolic extension of, or symbolic representation of what we plan to do. So peace to everybody that was down there. I love all of you. Yeah. So the other thing that's been going on, we've had a couple of plane crashes and some other reports of some suspicious activity on some flights. Not sure what's going on there. Haven't really dug too deep into it yet. The plane in DC that hit the Black Hawk, report that I saw from a woman who CNN reported to be a Black Hawk pilot herself, said there were at least 3 things that went wrong with that one. One of them being there should have been 2 crew chiefs. That's what she said. I can't remember her name. Should have been a crew chief at the front of the helicopter, and it should have been one at the back watching the back and the sides that the crew in the cockpit couldn't see. That was one thing that she said was wrong. The other thing she said was wrong was they were flying too high. And I think they're only supposed to be 200 feet, and they were at 350 or 400 feet. And then the third thing she said was that the tower, the air traffic control tower, was reporting to be for the helicopter to look out for, I guess, the plane that was approaching to land at Reagan, and they were looking at a plane taking off, and they were, I don't know if the tower was calling both of the planes the same number, or if the pilot and the Black Hawk misunderstood what they were saying. But anyway, so they weren't tracking the plane coming in for landing. They were tracking the Black Hawk crew. They were tracking a plane that was taking off. And so they evidently never saw that plane. But anyway, it was a tragedy. 67, I think, is the report I heard, lives lost. That's a terrible tragedy. A lot of them were young people in figure skating, if I understand correctly. Then there was another plane crash in Philadelphia, I believe it was, and that was a medical transport plane that crashed in Philadelphia, in a residential area, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure how many lives were lost there. So don't know. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. I tend to, most of them are based in truth, but I tend to look for evidence before I try to formulate any kind of opinion. I know investigations are still underway, and so I won't speculate as to what I think's going on. I don't know what's going on, so I can't speak intelligently on what could possibly be going on. But I know, haven't been on social media that much, but I know the conspiracy theory 10 for Hat Brigade is in full effect. But just shout out. Well, my heart goes out to those who lost, who have family lives were lost on those flights. That's a tragedy that you never want to experience in any way. You don't want to know anybody, and you don't want to be involved yourself. So shout out to them. So tonight's episode is titled Lee Atwater, the Southern Strategy, and Coded Language, aka dog whistles. So, been a lot of talk this week at the national level in the media about DEI, which stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Um, it's an extension of affirmative action. It's a social program designed, to the best of my understanding, to provide opportunities for marginalized groups who may not otherwise get those opportunities. Seems to be some misunderstanding that it means if you fall into a marginalized class, you automatically get the job. To the best of my knowledge, that's not what it means. It means that they are recognizing that there are inequities in hiring and in, you know, all levels of employment, and they want to put measures in place to make sure that everybody gets the same opportunity at these same chance at these opportunities. We live in a white male dominated society. Let's not beat around the bush. Um, at the top levels of most companies, it's all white and mostly all white male. You don't see diversity until you get into the entry level and maybe just a level above that. That's when you see some faces that look like mine, and maybe Hispanic, maybe Asian, but you don't see at the executive levels very many people other than white males. So that's what affirmative action, to a degree, and diversity, equity, and inclusion are both trying to do. It's been kind of um, the objective has been kind of warped by rhetoric, and that's why I wanted to talk about um, Lee Atwater, because I think it's timely. So, but before I talk about Lee Atwater, I want to talk about the Southern Strategy, because I thought Lee Atwater was the architect of the Southern Strategy. He is not. It was attributed to a man named Harry S. Dent. Um, but I just want to tell you what the Southern Strategy is really quick. And this is from Wikipedia. Anybody can look it up. I'm gonna put the term in the chat so you can go back and do your own research. Everybody loves to say that. Do your research. So I'm gonna help. I'm gonna try to help. Um, Excuse me. Okay, so um, this is from Wikipedia. In American politics, the Southern Strategy was a Republican Party electoral strategy to increase political support among white voters in the South by appealing to racism against African Americans. As the civil rights movement and dismantling of Jim Crow laws in the 1950s and 60s visibly deepened existing racial tensions in much of the southern United States, Republican politicians such as presidential candidates Richard Nixon and Barry Goldwater developed strategies that successfully contributed to the political realignment of many white conservative voters in the South who had traditionally supported the Democratic Party. Um, they had traditionally supported the Democratic Party so consistently that the voting pattern was named the Solid South. This strategy also helped to push the Republican Party much more to the right. By winning all of the South, a presidential candidate could obtain the presidency with minimal support elsewhere. That's a lot. Okay, so basically, and this is the thing that confuses people, or that they just are not aware of, because when you start talking about race and politics, people who don't know better love to say, well, black people are just blindly Democrat, and they should be Republicans. So this is what they are unaware of. Before Barry Goldwater in particular ran in 1954, when did Barry Goldwater ran? I want to give you right and exact information. Barry Goldwater President. 1964. Okay. So he ran for president in 1964. I always say 54, maybe because that's when my mom was born. Before Barry Goldwater ran for president in 1964, the South was primarily Democrat. The Democratic Party, up until then, had been the party of the staunch racists, the KKK, those people involved in the Wilmington Massacre of 1898. They were all Democrats. The red shirts were Democrats. The white Citizens Union, or the white, what's the name of the group that the White Citizens Union or White Citizen Government. It was a group in Wilmington. They were Democrats. The Democrat was the racist party. The KKK came out of the Democratic Party for the most part. In 1964, they developed this strategy, the Southern strategy. And what they did was they highlighted that civil rights was coming to take white Southerners' jobs, and that the N words, for lack of a better term, were getting ready to take over. And you saw the same thing leading up to 1898. In the newspapers, they, put this fear of a black North Carolina. They put these cartoons up showing us as vampires and stuff coming to take their blood. So the Southern strategy was this again. But what happened? You had people like Strom Thurmond of South Carolina. He's going to be important in just a minute. You had Jesse Helms never ran as a Democrat, as a Republican, but he was a Republican before this happened. He was in the media before he went into politics. George Wallace. Uh, who else? All of the Jesse Helms, Strom Thurmond, George Wallace, all of these racist Democrats switched to the Republican Party because they felt like they could guarantee the presidency or come close to winning with all the support of the South without much support from anywhere else in the country. And it worked because Lyndon Johnson said in 64, right, so Kennedy was killed in 63. Lyndon Johnson took over, and he said when he signed the Civil Rights Bill that he was guaranteeing that the South would go Republican for the next 100 years. Because they didn't want to do that. So I wanted to talk about the Southern strategy first because this is when black people didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left them, and the Democratic Party, or the staunch racists of the Democratic Party, moved over to the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party became the more liberal or progressive party. So black people were Republicans largely before this due to Lincoln freeing the slaves, right? But you have to remember Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the New Deal, and then Harry Truman with the Fair Deal came and passed social programs which black people were able to take advantage of to a degree, but not to the degree that white Americans were. They were largely left out of these social programs: Social Security, unemployment insurance, Social Security, unemployment insurance. What else did they have? They had the CCC Corps. They just go back and look at the New Deal and the programs that came out of that and look at how black people were excluded from these programs. The GI Bill is another one that we were excluded from largely because we couldn't use the programs that they had implemented or rolled out. We couldn't use them because people wouldn't do business with us. They wouldn't give us mortgages, and they wouldn't let us in their schools, which is a lot of what the GI Bill offered. So I wanted to talk about that first. Now I am going to. It's my dog barking. Present. Share screen. Let's see. So I don't like that. I'm gonna do it like this. Okay, so this man on the right, this is Lee Atwater. Now, who is Lee Atwater? Harvey Leroy Lee Atwater was an American political consultant and strategist for the Republican Party. He was an advisor to Republican U.S. Presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and chairman of the Republican National Committee. Atwater aroused controversy through his aggressive campaign tactics, especially the Southern strategy. Okay, so Wikipedia, this is from Wikipedia. They give him credit for the Southern strategy. My understanding was that it came about after. I mean, it came about before he came onto the scene. So let's talk about him. And there's a movie. It's a movie called. Um, it's a movie called. Yeah, it's a movie called The Boogeyman. It's available on Tubi. Um, and it's about Lee Atwater. And I watched it the other day, and it brought back so many memories of when I was growing up about things that went on. So Lee Atwater came onto the scene as well. He entered the politics. He's from South Carolina. He entered the political scene as a campaign guy for Strom Thurmond, White Citizens Council. Thank you, Brother Paul. Um, Thank you, Brother Paul. Good seeing you today. What is an operative, and do we need that on our side? Yeah, I think we do need some. I mean, we got to fight fire with fire. So I think you right on the money. No, it was it wasn't a White Citizens Council. It was a group in Wilmington, and it was the White something Union. I can't remember. I got to go back and watch Wilmington on Fire. If you haven't seen Wilmington on Fire, it's on Quelle TV. Definitely check that out. It's about the Wilmington Race Massacre of 1898. But anyway, back to Lee Atwater. So he comes onto the scene campaigning out of South Carolina for Strom Thurmond, who we already know was a segregationist and a racist. Although he had mulatto offspring, which a lot of them did. The slave masters had mulatto offspring; they were still racist. Having mulatto children don't make you not racist. So, but aside from that, so after gaining his earning his bones on Strom Thurmond's campaign for, I guess, state senate or U.S. Senate. I'm sorry. He goes into Karl Rove, also is a disciple of him. So if you know who Karl Rove is, Lee Atwater trained Karl Rove. So that'll give you some background as well. Crossroads GPS, I believe, is the organization that Karl Rove runs. All of these are far right, um, white nationalist, white supremacist organizations, in my opinion. So after he, learns the ropes with Strom Thurmond, he goes onto the national scene with Ronald Reagan. He's very instrumental, and that's you see him here shaking Ronald Reagan's hand. He's very instrumental in um, Ronald Reagan's presidential campaign, and the topic is coded language and dog whistles. So Lee Atwater gave a interview in 1981, where he was asked about the Southern strategy, and I'm gonna share that with you, and I want you to just listen to what he said, and then we're gonna talk about it. Stop sharing. Present. Share screen. Okay. All right. So if you can see this here in 1981, the legendarily brutal campaign consultant Lee Atwater was working in Ronald Reagan's White House when he was interviewed by Alexander Lamis for The Nation magazine. And I just want you to listen to what he says here. Wait a minute. I can't hear it either. Wait a minute.
Here's how I would approach that issue as a statistician or a political scientist, or no, as a psychologist, which I'm not, is how abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me on this. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts your backfire. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger nigger, you know. So any way you look at it, race is coming on the back burner.
Okay. So did you hear that? Did you hear what he said? He said you start out in 1954 saying nigger, nigger, nigger. Well, by 68, I think he said 68, you can't say that anymore because it hurts you. So you say things like busing, you say things like taxes. He said, he goes on to say, and any way you look at it, you're getting further and further away from the race problem because you're saying all these abstract things. Now, I don't agree with that part. You're not getting further and further away from it. You're just calling it something else. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because it's the same thing's happening now. What one of the instrumental things that Lee Atwater did was in the Ronald Reagan campaign, he opened the campaign in Neshoba County, Mississippi. Now, in Neshoba County, Mississippi, and I'm going to show you the picture, but you won't get the full effect. If you watch the movie, it's called Boogeyman. If you watch the movie, you'll get a much better, let me see, where is it? All right, here we go. All right, find my mouse. Hang on. Work with me. I'm a one-man show. So this is, hang on. This is Ronald Reagan in Neshoba County, where he began his presidential campaign. This was, and the speech is called the States' Rights Speech. Now, you can't see. I want to show you the big picture. It won't show you on here. But if you blow it up and you look at the people behind him, it's not a black face in the crowd that I can see. And on the movie, they show it better. It's in color for one thing, but over here to the left is a big Confederate flag. And not only that, Neshoba County is the place where the civil rights workers, Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner were murdered. And that wasn't Money, Mississippi. That was Emmett Till. Philadelphia, Mississippi, I believe is where they were murdered at. So Ronald Reagan makes the first stop on his presidential campaign in Neshoba County where these civil rights workers were murdered. And he gives a speech about states' rights. Now, you remember I just played you the recording of Lee Atwater saying you start out at 54 saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 68, you can't say that because it hurts you. So what did they do? Did they stop being racist all of a sudden? No. What they did was use coded language, aka dog whistles. Dog whistles, they call them dog whistles because, you know, there's a whistle that you can blow and the frequency is so high that only dogs can hear it. So they use that term in politics because you are winking and nodding at your base because you can't come right out and say the quiet part out loud like we hate a certain group of people or we hate a certain, you know, gender or whatever the case is, you have to use coded language. That's what, and that's what they're doing now. So what are some of the the coded words that have been thrown around? Um, welfare queens, um, immigrants. What else? Super predators. Um, let me think of another one. I said welfare queen. Uh, you know, drug addicts, animals. But and then what are some of the dog whistles today? So some of the dog whistles today are woke. Um, that's one. That's a word that started in our community. They took it. Now they've taken it to mean something. It's got a negative. It's a pejorative. It's got a negative connotation now. Woke. Uh, liberal is a bad word now. And DEI. These are all dog whistles. Now this is the thing. This is the thing that we need to be aware of or think about. There's a book called When Affirmative Action Was White. It's by Ira Katz Nelson. Um, in that book, he explains how all of the social programs that have been implemented in this country none of them have ever been specifically for the benefit of Black people. Not one. There's not been one program that was just for Black people and Black people only. There have been programs that are just for other groups. Specifically, one I can think of in particular is the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. I think it's known as the GI Bill. That was for a specific group of people. It was for GIs coming back from World War II. Also, it's credited with creating a middle class in America. Before that, there wasn't really a middle class. And how did they go about doing that? They went about doing it by giving them home loans, giving them money for school, giving them disability checks, and giving them money, until they could find a job, integrate back into the workforce. And they gave them training and jobs training too, all for the GI, and that created a middle class for all intents and purposes in this country. So, you know, we think that's fine because it was for the troops, and it was. But we can do the same thing for other groups too. Um, you shouldn't have to risk your life to get something from the government that will help you and help the government. I mean, by helping us, you know, we can pay more taxes. If we make more money, we pay more taxes. That's how that goes. So, the question is, why wouldn't they want uh, uh, you know our community to be strong? But anyway, so Ronald Reagan opens his uh, campaign where Cheney Goodman and Schwerner got murdered and gives a speech on states' rights. This sent the message to the Republican base that we got you. We on your side. Oh yeah, crack babies. That's a good one. Yep, crack babies. That's another coded word. Um, I should have wrote them down, but thank you, brother Paul. You got my back as usual. Um, so Ronald Reagan wins. He beats Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter just passed on. Um, and he's a two-term president. And then George H.W. Bush runs for president in 1990, whatever it was. Anyway, Lee Atwater is his campaign chairman, and Lee Atwater takes under his wing a young George W. Bush, so the son. And he and Lee work on the campaign together. And it's interesting in the movie, the documentary, they talk about one part that was interesting. He was like, "Oh yeah, Lee, you give him 30 minutes, he'll come back with a poll. He like them polls." He was talking about how the polls, like they just said whatever they wanted to say. And another interesting thing about it is somebody says in the movie that Lee hated sports except for pro wrestling, and he said politics ain't nothing but wrestling. Very telling. This man was at the highest levels of inside of government, and he thought it was all like a show. And you know, if you watch the documentary, like they just said whatever they wanted to say. And so he becomes campaign chairman for George H.W. Bush, who is running against Michael Dukakis, and they roll out this issue here, which helps really won George H.W. Bush really won him the race. Hang on, let me show you. I'm not doing too well with my screen here. That's not it. Okay, I see what I'm doing. Okay, here it is. This guy right here. You see this guy? This is Willie Horton. Now, who is Willie Horton? Willie Horton was a convicted murderer who was the subject of a major political controversy in 1988 in the 1988 presidential election. Now look at Willie. So Willie got locked up, and Michael Dukakis, who was the governor of Massachusetts at the time, passed a program where convicted felon, or I ain't gonna say, well, if he was convicted of murder, he's a felon. Convicts could get out on furlough for the weekend or stuff like that. It's a brother named Chaz from New York. He was a big time bank robber. He went into rap, Black Hand. He was doing the same thing. He was locked up somewhere, and they would let him out for the weekend or to go to work or whatever. And they was robbing banks and had apartments and everything. I saw that on. So this same kind of deal here. Willie got out, and he raped and brutalized somebody in Massachusetts. And the George H.W. Bush campaign took this and made it a centerpiece in their campaign and said, by Michael Dukakis doing this, he was soft on crime and America would be in danger. Now, the thing to understand about this is, look at Willie. You know what I mean? So this scared America. You know, this scared America when they put this up here, and they said, and this is a tactic they use. They use quite often. They say, you know, if you let this guy in, like, you're not gonna be safe. He's gonna let people like Willie. He's gonna let people like Willie out, and they're gonna do something to you. So he won the 1988 campaign by a landslide after the Willie Horton thing came out. So, you know, the thing they try to say is, well, you know, when the left or progressives bring race into it, they say we are practicing, excuse me, they say we're practicing identity politics. So what is the Southern strategy if it's not identity politics? You're playing up the race issue because you know that whites are nervous about race and that they'll vote for you if you scare them enough. That's identity politics. Identity politics is defined as a tendency for people of a particular religion, ethnic group, social background, etc., to form exclusive political alliances, moving away from traditional broad-based party politics. That's the Southern strategy. They use race. They use race. They use race when Reagan won, because they started out where the civil rights workers got murdered. They used race in the race between Michael Dukakis and George W. Bush. Bill Clinton even used race. Look up a guy called Ricky Rector. So Ricky Rector was a prisoner. He was convicted of something heinous, but he was a vegetable. He was a quadriplegic and of a threat to no one because he couldn't move. And they executed him. Bill Clinton came off the campaign trail and went and witnessed it to show that he was tough on crime. Now, you know, the death penalty, I don't know where I fall on that. Depends on who it is and what they did, I think. But I ain't gonna say nobody's above um, the state taking their life, because it's some really heinous. I mean, you know, it depends on what you do. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm not a pro or anti death penalty advocate. I think it's case by case. I do know that it disproportionately affects Black people, and I do know that we don't always get a fair shot at a fair trial. So that's right. Bill Clinton used Sister Soldier too. Yeah, when she quoted Dr. Bobby Rush. I think it was Bob. I always get his name wrong. Um, but yeah, that's right. So don't let them confuse you and make you think that race is not an issue. They what they're doing is using coded language. And you know, this is the thing that frustrates me a lot about confronting racism. And I'm sure it's not only me. You can call it anything in the world you want to, just don't call it racism. But see, me and the way I operate is I gotta call it exactly what it is. I think Confucius said the beginning of wisdom is calling things by their proper names. So I'm not gonna call it anti woke. I'm gonna call it anti black. I'm not gonna say anti DEI. I'm gonna say anti black. And the thing I was saying about the book called When Affirmative Action Was White. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling tonight. I should have prepared better. But in the book, Mr. Katz Nelson tells you quite clearly that the programs were not designed with Black people in mind. It's the fact that Black people met the criteria to qualify for the program. It wasn't for them. It was for poor white people and poor Europeans and not poor Black people. But Black people were in the same economic conditions, so they qualified. And even when they qualified, they found ways to not um, give them the full benefits. You know what I mean? With unemployment insurance, one of the things with unemployment insurance was that you couldn't give the people that worked in the fields and worked for the white people in the South to more than they was getting on their job, because you were going to upset the labor market. If they can get more from unemployment than they can get from going to your job, they're not going to come to your job. So they had to make that agreement before they even instituted unemployment insurance, that they were not going to pay, unemployment was not going to pay more or close to what they were going to make cleaning up white people's houses and working in white people's fields. So also with Social Security, it's based on how much you make and how much you contribute in and how long you contribute in, right? So if Black people is unemployed a lot and they don't make a lot, then they ain't going to draw a lot when they retire. That's another way. I asked ChatGPT all this stuff this week, and it spit it out, like how we marginalize. I posted it on my personal page. I think I posted it on the Gospel of Ecclesia page too. But it's all there, and it's accurate. So, um, so this is the thing about it. When they say anti DEI, they probably not specifically meaning us, but you can trust and believe it's going to negatively impact us, because even though they didn't create anything for us, when they do away with it, it's going to hurt us. It's going to probably hurt us more than it hurts most other groups, because as they say, when America gets a cold, Black people get the flu. The Black community gets the flu. So it's always worse for us than it is, the effects of it are worse for us than it is for other people. Yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to talk about tonight. And just to try to, I could have did a better job of tying it all together. But yeah, they say these words, anti-woke and DEI and civil rights and they everything but being deliberate about accurately describing what it is, who it's going to affect, and what it's going to do. So don't fall into um, don't fall into the trap of cutting off your nose to spite your face. I know there are some groups that have hijacked or jumped the line as far as benefits um, from this country. There's some that don't even need benefits and they get them, and that's in every group. There's fraud and abuse, and that's not just black people. They love to paint us as Ronald Reagan had a thing about a woman that was a welfare queen. That was a big thing. I think that was in his reelection campaign. And years later, we find out that it wasn't even true. I know I posted that article. I don't know if it was The Nation or somebody. They did an in-depth expose, and the lady wasn't even because they were trying to say she was getting 4 or 5 welfare checks and she was driving a Cadillac. Black lady, of course, but if you really look at who abuses the government's uh, coffers and funds, I bet you'd be surprised that it's not us. It's not even. It's not even. We make up 15-20% of the population. It's not even proportionately. It's not even a lot of us on social programs. It's the majority of black people don't live in the hood, and the ones that do live in the hood, that's fine. But that's not just because that's the narrative they push and that's what they show on TV. That's not the reality of um, the black people I'm around. Not knocking anybody, and the other stereotype is that we're lazy. And I don't know very many lazy people. Me for one, I've been working since I was 16 years old, nonstop. I have a job, always have, uh, because I didn't want to take penitentiary chances, so I got a job, and I couldn't do what the D boys did, but I could do a little bit, and keep my freedom too. So, and the community I come from, everybody worked, men and women. So I just don't know. I do know some lazy black people. I know some lazy white people. I don't know many Asians, so I can't say I know any lazy Asians, but I know some lazy Hispanic people, and so it's not a ethnic thing. It's an individual thing. If you lazy as hell, you just lazy as hell. It don't matter what ethnic group you belong to. So Star Parker. Who is Star Parker? Who's Star Parker, brother Paul? I'm gonna have to bring you on and talk about that. But anyway, so that's basically what I wanted to talk about tonight, and we're coming right up on an hour, so I won't belabor my point. But just remember that Lee Atwater. Remember these things and do some reading on your own, and you can probably come to the understanding uh, easier than what I've tried to do. But just remember the Southern strategy, what it did, who was involved. Remember Lee Atwater, who he was. Watch The Boogeyman. It's on Tubi. It's a documentary about him, and Lee was evil, in my opinion. He did some evil things, and it's interesting how he ended up. You know what I mean? He was a voracious campaign strategist, and he kind of went out with a whimper. I don't know if that's ironic or if that's karma, but I won't tell the whole movie, but excuse me. Yeah, but yeah, and just understand, you know, that they don't say the quiet part out loud. They rename it, and they come up with a different name. He's different. He's exotic. They come up with all kinds of things, but they all mean the same thing. Less than, you know, like the welfare poster child. Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, that's all I got for you tonight. I hope you guys have a good week. I hope you've learned something. And oh, okay, that's a great. Brother Paul putting up a link. Pimps, whores, welfare brats, conservative. And there's also a good movie. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's called Bad Faith, and it's about the evangelicals and how they use coded language and how they, use issues to achieve white supremacist goal objectives and goals. And it'll tie very well into the movie about Lee Atwater. So watch Lee Atwater, The Boogeyman, the Lee Atwater story, and then watch Bad Faith. I think it's on Amazon Prime. And hit me up and tell me what you thought about it. All right. We're gonna be okay. I know it's been a crazy last 10 to 12 days. I know it's been bananas, but that's okay. Don't, take a break if you need to. Don't immerse yourself into the craziness because it's only gonna make you crazy. And you can't make sense out of stuff that makes no sense. So don't frustrate yourself trying. And on that note, I'm gonna say peace to everybody. And y'all have a good week, and we'll be back at you next week. Peace and love. Cleasy gone.